On Tuesday, September 11th at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time, 2001, four planes were hijacked by the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda. Two of those planes hit the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center. One of those planes hit the Pentagon, and one crashed in Pennsylvania, heading for the White House. Because of these events, nearly 3,000 Americans were killed. I think anybody that was able to witness those events, the way that they happened in the moment, whether you were watching on TV or a part of it in a different way, it's important to remember. For me, I can remember being 7 years old, my parents waking me up, a little bit earlier than typical for school that day. I started out every day going to the after school and before school program with Parks and Recreation. And part of that was getting up when my parents would get up for work and getting in the car with them, having them take me to school. I remember them waking me up and telling me to come witness what was happening. I remember standing right in front of our TV, not really scared or in fear, because I don't really think that I quite grasped what was happening, but just nervousness and kind of somber. I could tell just by how my parents were reacting that this was something very, very serious and something worth witnessing. And because of that, I think that I started to get nervous. I remember witnessing the second tower get hit. I remember seeing the towers fall. My parents took me to school. I know a lot of people, a lot of students at that time didn't go to school. I specifically remember one of my really close friends being there at school, being able to talk to them about it. I also remember close friends that weren't at school. And I think as kids, you don't understand the complexities politically, the complexities as far as our global presence, and you don't really quite understand what's happening in the world when something like that is taking place. And I think going to school sort of helped ease my nervousness, ease my nerves, and allowed me to just talk to the other students like it was any other day. I think that the thing that I really dreaded was, on the way home once school was over, how that ride home was going to be with my dad, what we were going to listen to on the radio. I think even at a young age, I was terrified of the idea of the United States going to war. And I think for people that are younger than myself, you could have potentially grown up at a time where the United States was always at war with the war on terrorism, and you don't know any different. But America had been at peace for a long time post Persian Gulf War, and that was something that certainly scared me. Right, I did not necessarily want that to be, my generation's war, um, and I was nervous about that. I remember I was even as a kid I was fascinated by World War II. And I used to draw my friends pictures of like Pearl Harbor reenactments, and we're talking like 2D, water with just like crescents for boats and guns, shooting just lines as bullets. Very crude drawings of Pearl Harbor. And I can remember a shift in time where instead of drawing Pearl Harbor, I would draw a plane hitting two towers. And like I mentioned, as a kid, you just don't quite understand the significance of that and how that's going to affect your whole life. One thing that I do remember was how America just came together from this, and I think that's really the most important lesson in all of this. I am a massive NASCAR fan, and even was at a young age. And I can remember watching the first NASCAR race after 9/11. They took a week off, and then they got back to action in Dover, Delaware, on a 1 mile concrete track. And at the time, the most popular driver in the sport was Dale Earnhardt Jr. While Jeff Gordon was sort of the dominant driver and was my favorite driver, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was by far the most popular. His dad had just passed away that February in the Daytona 500. And in July that year, he had won a race in Daytona, and everybody just really rallied around that and healed from that. And so Dale Jr. actually won this first race back from uh, to racing from 9/11. He had a big American flag on the back of his car. A lot of drivers did patriotic paint schemes. Ken Schrader just made his entire car uh, an American flag, and that's not necessarily his decision. It's something that they talked to their sponsor M&M's about, and M&M's was all bought in on. We don't even need to be on the car this weekend. Just put the American flag on the car, and it just kind of goes to show the amount of patriotism that the country was feeling at this time. And Dale Jr. sort of winning at Dover was sort of this perfect moment of healing where everything just kind of seemed back to normal. And I can just remember, the commercials during that race, a lot of them focused on military. I remember the Army had a really big campaign post 9/11 talking about the heroes of every generation. And yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible to watch. I can also remember watching even later on in that year, in 2001, the Yankees going to the World Series. I, as a kid, loved baseball. Obviously, loved the Mariners from Pacific Northwest. And but you can't not love winners when you're a kid. And the Yankees at that time, with Mariano Rivera and Jorge Posada and Derek Jeter and Alfonso Soriano and all these amazing players, Roger Clemens, Andy Pettit. I could go on and on, right? I loved that team. But that team makes it all the way to the World Series, and just about a month and a half after September 11th, um, they're playing World Series games in Yankee Stadium in New York, and I can vividly remember President George W. Bush throwing out the first pitch at one of those games, and that too was just kind of a healing moment for our country, and you just kind of felt like the nation was rising to be better and rising together. Um, I also can't not talk about the war on terror, right? This war that has just recently ended in Afghanistan that lasted, 20 years. It lasted most of my lifetime. I was very nervous that it would become my children's war as well. And time will tell. Obviously, you never know what happens in the world. But I can remember post 9/11, um, there being kind of a tense feeling about war. But generally, I think most people in the United States were very patriotic, and a lot of people, I think, wanted revenge against Al Qaeda and terrorism in general. Um, Post 9/11, I think it was interesting because we were all used to peace, and so heading to war was kind of this real big deal. Um, there was sort of the war on terrorism in Afghanistan that had been going up until just recently, but then there was also kind of compounded in all of this very complex war in Iraq and this invasion in Iraq in 2003, and just a lot of complexities with that. And I think a lot of the people that would have joined the military post 9/11 um, ended up involved in that war in Iraq. And I think as a child, I just really had no idea. I just assumed any war we were in the Middle East was over terrorism, and we're fighting the good fight. I think as I've gotten older now, um, I understand that there was a lot more to that war in Iraq with Saddam Hussein and everything uh, than the terrorist attacks and 9/11. I really just want this never forget legacy to be remembered. Because it's not about this never forget, never forgive mentality. What it really is about is remembering a time when America came together to not only mourn those that we lost on 9/11, but to rise up against terrorism and against fear in the world. And it was just one of the most patriotic times I can ever remember. It was our generation's Pearl Harbor, and it was a moment that United States citizens rallied around. And I look at a time like today in 2021 where, um, where the country's so divided. We're so divided over politics, over a million different things that I'm not going to mention. But it's nice to kind of think back to a time when the country was united on one thing, and that was pride for our country. And I think that we all need to get back to that. So this 9/11, obviously, never forget those who died. Never forget, anybody that was involved at all in any of the war on terrorism. Um, all the brave family members, mothers, sons, daughters, fathers of service members, and any involvement in the war on terror. Never forget those people. Never forget any of the people that we've lost. And I think that this is just a good time for everybody to share their 9/11 story. It's worth talking about, and it's worth getting your story out there because, as I've noticed in my lifetime, everybody remembers that moment. If you were there to witness it, you 100% have it ingrained in your mind. And I'd be really interested to hear everybody's 9/11 story. So please let me know down in the comments, or even make your own videos and share those with us as well. But anyways, guys, I know this is kind of a different one, but I just wanted to take a second to talk a little bit about 9/11. Never forget. Thanks for watching.